Good day, everyone. This is Jason P. Reyes from Bachelor in Mathematics Education. At this moment, allow me to present to you the topic of the Unit 1, which is the ICTs and Teacher Education, Global Context and Framework. So here we go. Information and Communication Technologies, or ICTs, are a major factor in shaping the new global economy and producing rapid changes in society. ICT change how people communicate and see the world in a modern way, especially in this time of pandemic. New possibilities are emerging in meeting basic learning needs, and it is clear that the educational potential of these new possibilities has barely been tapped, especially in teacher and student, in teaching and in learning. Significant transformation in industry, agriculture, medicine, business, engineering, and other fields. They also transformed the traditional nature of education as well as the teaching and learning process, providing essential skills to pre-service and in-service teacher to have basic ICT competencies, enhance the teaching and learning process within teacher education programs, prepare each individual involved to use the new tool of learning. Provide students with the knowledge and skills they will need to thrive in the emerging trends of 21st century knowledge-based school and society, and to provide students with the skill to function effectively in this dynamic, information-rich, and continuously changing environment, transforming the teacher-centered and text-bound classroom into rich, student-focused, interactive, knowledge environments where students are the merely player of the classroom and the teachers are the facilitator. An educational system into alignment with a knowledge-based, information-rich society. At this juncture, let's talk about the traditional view of the learning process. When we talk about traditional view of the learning process, teacher-centered approach to learning, which means that the teacher is the expert and the dispenser of knowledge to the students. It serves as the repository and transmitter of knowledge, unlike the student-centered, where students allowed to discover and try to create new ideas with their prior ideas into new existing knowledge. So first factor, we have this learning is hard. Why learning is hard? According to this view, if students are having fun or enjoying what they are doing in a learning activity, they probably are not learning. Why? Because it does not challenging. Maybe they are just doing such thing for compliance without knowing the importance of it on their daily lives. Next is learning is based on deficit model of students. So as we can see here on the model, which is the teacher is the dispenser or the center of learning, while he or she is transferring the content or the idea to his or her students. So it just probably simple as a dispenser filling a water of glass. So this system strives to identify the deficiencies and weaknesses of the students. Based on how we generalize our students really affect our style and teaching and learning environment. Many students was affected with this kind of scheme before it will become as the basis of scoring and competencies. Next is we have this learning is a process of transfer and reception. What is it? Much of our present learning enterprise remains information-oriented, emphasizing students reproducing knowledge rather than producing their own knowledge. It is very cliche before that teachers do not think of a way to make us skilled by just reading the book and to ask questions about the main character made me realize of having this low thinking ability skills being acquired. Students as the passive receiver, storer, and repeater of the transmitted information. So that's the learning is a process of transfer and reception. Next is we have this learning is an individual or solitary process. So before, students learn in their own pace and only on their own. This promotes solitary behavior, where students try to discover things on their own way. But we try to remember that two brains are better than one, which means we need also company and peers to work with for better accomplishments. Next is we have this learning is facilitated by breaking of content. So learning is not just isolated for one object. So before they prefer to have this kind of subjects. So for example, mathematics. So in that content, mathematics only. So we need to think of a way where this idea and knowledge is likely linked to such certain situation like lifelong learning. So next we have this learning is a linear process. So when we talk about linear, it means it's just one way. Teachers need to avoid this kind of mentality, but before in traditional way of teaching, it is rarely practiced or always practiced. Teachers are just giving of content based on the topic, not on the content and impact that was being delivered. At this moment, let's talk about a new paradigm of the teaching learning process is based on research and theory being conducted by experts and government. So, new paradigm of the teaching learning process that encompasses the following views of a human learning process. So, first we have this learning as a natural process. So, how it would become natural process? Given the theory of Howard Gardner's multiple intelligence, we learn in different style and pace. There are different learning, perceptual, and personality styles that we must be considered in the design of learning experiences for the individual student. Now, let's go to the learning as a social process. We are better thinker when we work at a group. Why? Because we are human beings and we better learn and think if we have our friends and peers. Also, living in a healthy environment where everyone supports you mentally and spiritually also counts. They also provide new tools for support this collaborative learning in the classroom and online. Next is learning is an active and not a passive process. We doesn't need to be just a glass waiting to be filled with water. We need to find ways for us to learn and grow on ourselves. This would be possible by the help of the teachers and its curriculum. We are challenged on producing knowledge rather than simply reproducing knowledge. Next is we have this learning may either be linear or non-linear. Students learn by argumenting, combining, and rearranging collection of cognitive maps, many of which overlap or interconnected through a complex network of associations, which means that we need to regenerate ideas and pedagogy on how are we going to suffice the different needs of students. Next is learning is an integrative and contextualized. Information can be given. The connection can be even stated. Building an integrated globally linked environment for learning had a great impact, especially in maintaining the learning process. The teacher's role is to help them in several ways to make connections and to integrate knowledge. Next is learning is based on a strength model of students' ability, interest, and culture to learn in different ways. Bringing up the model of Mr. Gardner again about multiple intelligence, which means we do not need to generalize our students to what kind of approach and strategy we have. They learn in different ways so that we learn also to match our strategy towards their learning pace. Next is learning is assessed through task, completion, products, and real problem solving of both individual and group efforts. Traditional way of measuring the knowledge of students is very passive and not reliable because it can only measure some of the domains and not all. There is growing recognition of today's world requires that students be able to work collaboratively with others, think critically and creatively, and reflect on their own learning process. We have a quote from this call 1994. We no longer can view learners as empty vessel waiting to be filled, but rather an active organism seeking for meaning. Next topic, we have a shift from teaching to learning. So technology has created change in all aspects of society, especially in education. It also changing our expectation to what students must learn in order to function in the new world economy. A shift from teacher-centered instruction to learner-centered instruction is needed to enable students to acquire the new 21st century knowledge and skills, according to Sandholt, Ringstaff, and Dewar in 1997. The role of the teacher will change from knowledge transmitter to that of learning facilitator, knowledge guide, knowledge navigator, and co-learner with the students. The role does not diminish the importance of the teacher, but requires new knowledge and skills. Students will have greater responsibility for their own learning in this environment as they seek out, find, synthesize, and share their knowledge with others. So as we can see here in the pictures, we have this teacher-centered learning, which is on the second column, and the learner-centered learning environments, which is on the third column. First is we have this classroom activity. So in the teacher-centered learning environment, it is teacher-centered, or the teacher was the only one who is talking or didacted. While here in the learner-centered, we have this learner-centered or interactive. Next is we have this teacher role. On the teacher-centered, we have this fact teller or always the expert. So he or she is the only one who is talking in the front, telling us fact and always the expert on that field. While on the learner-centered, we have this collaborator or sometimes a learner. So that's the teacher role. Next is instructional emphasis. On the teacher-centered, we have facts memorization, which is on the lower level of what we call this cognitive aspects. Next is relationships, inquiry, and inventions, which promotes creation, emphasizing relationship and inquiries theories, which improves the skills, especially higher order thinking ability skills of the students. Next is concepts of knowledge, or the accumulation of facts, quantity, which is on the teacher-centered, while on the learner-centered is transformation of facts. While on the demonstration of success, we have this norm reference, or they are ranked based on their performance. While here on the learner-centered, we have this quality of understanding, or the quality on how they understand the content of the lesson. Next is we have this assessment. We have these multiple choice items here in the teacher-centered, so very old. We have this paper and pencil test. Next is on the learner-centered, we have this criterion reference, portfolios, and performance, which is very elastic and very friendly, especially to those who have other preferences in learning. While here on technology use, we have this drill and practice on the teacher-centered, and on the learner-centered, we have this communication, access, collaboration, and expression. Then, how about in the changes in teacher role? First is a shift from knowledge transmitter, primary source of information, content expert, and source of all answers. So that's the role of the teacher before. While a shift to or now, which is the learning facilitator, the collaborator, the coach, the mentor, the knowledge navigator, and co-learner. Next is a shift from teacher controls and directs all aspects of learning, while it shifts to teacher gives students more options and responsibilities for their own learning, which is very healthy. Next is changes in student role. So, a shift from passive recipient of information to active participant in the learning process. Next is reproducing knowledge, where it shifted to producing and sharing knowledge, participating at times as expert. While last is a shift from learning as a solitary activity to a shift to learning collaboratively with others. Now, at this moment, let's talk about the theories supporting the new view of the learning process. So, these changes has been passed through generation to generation, and by the help of research and theories in building a strong education system. Each of these theories is based on the same underlying assumption that learners are active agents, purposefully seeking and constructing knowledge within a meaningful context. The student-centered environment illustrated in this figure shows that the learner interacts with other students, the teacher information, resources, and technology. It means they are the center of the learning process. So as we can see here on the circle, the environment provides the learner with coaching and scaffolding in developing knowledge and skills. It provides a rich collaborative environment, enabling the learner to consider diverse and multiple perspectives to address issues and solve problems. So first we have this Vygotsky's sociocultural theory. So Vygotsky's sociocultural theory of human learning describes learning as a social process and the origination of human intelligence in society or culture. Which means if the environment is healthy, then the child is also healthy holistically. It also mentioned about the zone of proximal development or the CPD. This zone is the area of exploration of which the student is cognitively prepared, but requires health and social interaction to fully develop. So that's the CPD. Next is we have this John Piaget, which is students may attempt to construct ideas by creating new ideas with their existing knowledge, which means it must be balanced or in equilibrium. So development of child's cognitive functions and the founding principle of constructivist theory. So that is John Piaget. Next is we have this Jerome Bruner, which is learning is an active process in which learners construct new ideas or concepts based upon their prior knowledge and experience. So they have the same perception with John Piaget. But he emphasized readiness to learn, the organizing of the learning, and the creating of going beyond what was learned. So that is on Jerome Bruner. Next is we have this problem-based learning, or the develop higher order thinking skills by providing students with authentic and complex problems and cases. That's it. So next is we have this anchored instruction, an approach to design instruction that is anchored or in a real-world context, problem, or situation. So we need to define our real goal as a teacher. It is to become a civic citizen of the nation, which means we need to learn the context, problem, and situation of the world we are living in the same atmosphere. We need to remember that. Next is distributed cognition, which emphasizes the cognitive growth is fostered through interaction with others. So making emphasis on the cognitive growth and fostering interactions with other people, which promotes our learning or how we are going to learn. Next is the cognitive flexibility theory. It asserts that people acquire knowledge in ill-structured domains by constructing multiple representation and linkages among knowledge units. So, our minds is very flexible, as well as the way we learn. We need to do and know our own pace, connect learning, and try to build new ideas through its linkages. Next is how about the cognitive apprenticeship? Instructional process in which teachers or more experienced or knowledgeable peers provide scaffolds to support learners' cognitive growth and development. So, this emphasizes our role as a teacher, not virtual teacher. We are trained to be the expert in our field, to be the transfer and scaffold of learnings towards our student. It means we doesn't need to teach only on cognitive, but also on affective and psychomotor domains. Next is the situated learning. Use apprenticeship, coaching, collaboration, authentic context, task, activities, and cognitive tools. Situated learning emphasizes on the use of those. It means that we learn more when we touch it, see it, and experience it. That's it. And last is we have this self-regulated learning, or are those who are aware of their own knowledge and understanding. So, we have here an example what they know and what they do not know or need to understand. An example of self-regulated. So are you aware or you are aware of your knowledge and skills as a person? And that's it. Thank you for listening.